Thank you. Since we reinstituted and gave new life to these Catholic Foundation dinners, it's been our privilege to have as speakers Cardinal McCarrick of Washington, who was the Archbishop of Washington at the time he came, Archbishop Dolan, now Cardinal Dolan, the Archbishop of New York, who was with us, Dr. Carolyn Wu, now the President of Catholic Relief Services, but at that time the Dean of the Mendoza School of Business at Notre Dame University. Last year, Cardinal Donald Wuerl, the Archbishop of Washington. And this year, I have equal enthusiasm as I introduce to you this year's Catholic Foundation speaker. You know that in the past, I've drawn attention to two particular programs at Notre Dame, which have resulted in the presence of young men and women, graduates not just of Notre Dame, but of other Catholic colleges and universities. One program is called ECHO, and those students get a master's degree in theology, and they work in our schools and in our parishes in religious education, in Christian formation, in youth ministry, and in many other ways. A number of the parishes this year, all four are in Hillsborough, three are in Hillsborough County, and one is in Pasco County at Our Lady of the Rosary Parish. We've also had, for almost 15 of my 17 years as bishop here, a program called ACE. And I've introduced the ACE teachers in the past, and I wish to do so again tonight along with the ECHO teachers and students that are here, for they give 2 years immediately after graduation to sharing their excitement for learning and their deeply held belief in our faith and in our church. They are incredible witnesses, and I think every pastor and principal who's had or currently has an ECHO or an ACE student would attest to that. They're all sitting at one table over on this side, so could I ask, there's 11 in all, but there's one that's not here tonight, or two that aren't here this evening, but would the 9 of you please stand up and let us recognize and thank you. ACE was an idea of Catholic education when the University of Notre Dame did not itself have a school of education. In fact, when they first started, the master's degrees were given by their sister school, Portland, the University of Portland, which did have an education department. But two originators, Father Sean McGraw and Father Timothy Scully, who's with us this evening and will soon speak to us, had this vision of young people working like in the AmeriCorps program, but at the same time that they're working, earning a master's degree in education. Their enthusiasm, their expertise in the areas that they teach has been incredible. And they've given vitality and life to almost all of the school programs where they've been present over the years. I've often said, and I will say again tonight, that if I was like David Letterman and had a top 10 list and looked at the top 10 things that I'm very proud of and I think have been a part of our church life in the 17 years that I've been privileged to be your bishop, the ACE and now the ECHO program would be a part of it. So with great gratitude, with enormous respect, and with great fondness and love, it's my pleasure tonight to introduce to you not just the creator and founder of the ACE program, but in a sense the true genius behind it, Father Tim Scully.
You know, it was just 2 days over a month ago that I was in your state, and I'm having a hell of a better time than I was on January 7th. But for those of you who are Alabama fans, God, you guys really gave us a hell of a time. It's so nice to be back in Florida. So nice to not be in Miami tonight. So, anyway, I cannot honestly, I'm Irish, so I exaggerate everything, but I can't tell you how privileged we are to work with Bishop Bob Lynch. I'm going to ask you to get on your feet and let's give a round of applause to your ordinary Archbishop Bob Lynch. Wonderful, wonderful church.
Yes, indeed.
Bob, you have been better than a friend, an inspired shepherd, and we have no better friend, honestly, in the whole Catholic Church in the United States than Bob Lynch. And, you know, Bishop Lynch asked me to talk for a while here tonight, and I'm concerned. So I am going to keep my eye on the clock because I think we know how to raise money better than you do, Bob. And let me tell you something. You don't understand that for every minute I don't speak, you'll get 3 times what you would have gotten. So with your permission, I'm going to cut it a little shorter than you had anticipated. This year has been proclaimed by our wonderful Holy Father, Pope Benedict, a year of faith. And he called it a renewal of our faith in Jesus Christ. Now, we know that Catholic schools are the most powerful vessel for the new evangelization. And by the way, there's nothing new about evangelization, but it is a fresh evangelization. Our schools are good for the church, but they're also good for the nation. And what I need to just, if you were to take away anything tonight, I want you to understand how our research has underscored how Catholic schools contribute to the common good of this country in unique and powerful ways. We call these schools sacred places serving civic purposes. Sacred places serving civic purposes. Consider this. Decades of research tell us that no system of schools, charter, private, public, have demonstrated the effectiveness at serving children in need than these schools. There exists no other educational intervention in the Department of Education with a track record like ours. We know that poor and minority children who attend our schools are half again as likely to graduate from high school and 2.5 times more likely to graduate from college. 98% of the kids of our schools here in St. Petersburg and across the country graduate from high school on time. 86% of them go on to college. Think about that. What does that mean for our country? What does that mean for our jail population? Our graduates are likely to earn higher wages. They're more likely to vote. They're more civically engaged. They're more tolerant of diverse views and races. They're more tolerant. By the way, our schools are more racially diverse than public schools. They are more committed to service when they're adults. For more than 2 centuries, our schools in this country have played this role. And the story of Catholic schools in this country for the first 150 years is one of great triumph over adversity. In the face of massive anti-Catholic, anti-immigrant sentiment, not unlike some of the sentiment we experience today, marginalized communities of newcomers built the best and largest private school system in the world. And this achievement was only possible because of the enormous sacrifices made by people like my grandparents and yours, and many of the heroic thousands of religious women and men, mostly women, who dedicated their lives to Catholic schools. I saw a couple of sisters here. Would you please stand and be recognized? Now, in the last decade, we've closed more than 2,000 schools, and every one of those 2,000 buildings that have closed their doors, and every one of the 500,000 empty seats we have in our schools that are open represent a missed opportunity to educate a leader for our community and to form a future saint. So, the story of Catholic education, Catholic schools in the 21st century is starting to look like an obituary. The goal of too many of our schools is simply don't close. The tragic irony that we must address if we're going to talk about Catholic schools as a vehicle for the new evangelization, we need to rewrite the story, and we can rewrite the story so that these schools can continue to serve these children so well. So, Bishop Lynch asked me to share some reflections tonight on the future of Catholic schools. And so, let me just share a quick little anecdote. There's a wonderful, I was educated by the Jesuits, a number of you were, I think, here, and let's give the Jesuits a round of applause. Poor Jesuits never get an applause, come on. You know, there was this wonderful Jesuit poet, Gerard Manley Hopkins, and he was a creature of quintessential habit. He did the same thing every day, over and over and over again. Every day he would walk down the road near his home until he got to the bend in a road, down in Dublin, of course, where he lived and taught at Newman's First Catholic University in Dublin in Ireland, and then he would turn around and walk home. And one day, Hopkins, Gerard Manley Hopkins, was joined on the walk by a friend. And he got to a point in the path where he had always turned around, but his friend asked him to go further, just one more bend around the road. And when he came around the bend, Hopkins suddenly saw the Wicklow Mountains hovering in the distance. And he never really noticed those mountains, and they took his breath away. And later, thinking about his experience, he wrote about these mountains, that like the sunlight, they were always there, but he'd never noticed. And thus, one of his most famous lines was born. He said, these things were here, and but the beholder wanting, which two, when once they meet, the heart rears wings, bolder and bolder. And the heart hurls for him, half hurls for him off under their feet. The sight of the mountains just around the bend from his customary walk caused his heart to rear wings. So this epiphany, if you will, this utterly sublime moment was just sitting there waiting around the bend. And it took a friend to coax him around the bend to see something that would inspire one of the most beautiful verses ever written in the English language. I share this story because that's kind of the story of the Alliance for Catholic Education. Because our story is a story of friendship. I guess at the end of the day, just about everything that happens in the history of the church is a story of friendship from the disciples on. You know, I am an interloper in education. I'm not an educator by training. I'm a political scientist. I study Latin American politics. And shortly after I was ordained, I spent the first couple of years of my life writing articles that nobody will read and books that few will purchase. And I got tenure at Notre Dame, and I was totally depressed when I got tenure at Notre Dame, because I didn't become a priest to be a political scientist or to have tenure at Notre Dame. And so I was talking to my spiritual director, a sister, Lourdes Sheehan, who was at the time the executive secretary of the Catholic Conference of Bishops Committee on Education, and I told her how depressed I was, that I felt honestly, have you ever been in Iowa? There's this, forgive me, but there's an interstate highway called I-80, and it just disappears into the kind of horizon. And I said, I'm on I-80. And I'm going to die writing these obscure articles. So I honestly wanted to do something different. And she said, well, why don't you do something for Catholic schools? So literally, I don't know, Bob, if I ever shared this story with you, but that's how ACE started. I went back to Notre Dame after I met with Lourdes in Washington. We put an ad in the Observer, and we just said, hey, tired of getting homework? Why don't you give some, be a teacher? We had 250 kids show up in that room. And so we started this journey. A great friend of Bishop Lynch's, Father Dick Warner, it was my provincial at the time, and he knows that I suffer from attention deficit disorder. And he said, listen, I've known you for a while now, Tim, and if you get this thing started, you can't blink. And please don't get this thing started and then leave and go off and do something else. And I often do that. And so I didn't. For the first time in my life, I didn't. And I honestly believe that that was the work of providence for me. So we've had a ball. I'm so glad, Bishop, you recognize those. We have thousands of these ACE teachers all over the United States, and now leaders, and a couple other things going on. I want to just quote to you a line from a German poet. It's the only line from any German poet I ever understood, but this one says, unless one is committed, think about your own life. Unless you're committed, there's hesitancy, the chance to draw back, always the possibility of ineffectiveness. He said there's only one elementary truth, that the moment one definitely commits oneself, providence moves as well. And all sorts of things occur which no one could ever have dreamed of. So that's been kind of our experience. So 20 years ago, we started this thing that Bishop Lynch invited me to talk about. We had 40 teachers. Today, we've become much larger. We're the largest provider of talent and services to Catholic schools. And I'm excited about that. As Bishop Lynch mentioned, we don't have a school of education. We shut it down. I'm so glad we shut it down. And forgive me for those of you who have an education degree, but to be honest with you, these education departments are brutal. They're just brutal. And they have this kind of complicit arrangement with teachers' unions, and they reproduce the mediocrity that's killing our public schools and slowly strangling our Catholic schools. So, thank you for those of you who are applauding that don't have an education degree, no, and those of you who do, look, I mean, we're all in this together, but we really have to do things differently. You know, I mean, the old saw, when you're in a hole, the first thing you do is stop digging. You know, stop digging. And those education schools are mortal, and they're digging us deeper into this crisis. 15 years ago, John O'Connor, the Cardinal of Archbishop of New York, told me, stop calling ACE a program. It's a movement, and it is a movement. It's a movement in the hands of the Holy Spirit. So we have 2,000 teachers across the country. We have several hundred principals, but the most, and Bishop Lynch, forgive me, you're going to think this is, you know, you're sitting here experiencing your eulogy, but the fact of the matter is we have never experienced a greater welcome than we have here in St. Petersburg. So thank you so much. Let me close with just a little vignette. I was visiting St. Anne's recently, which is one of our schools, Notre Dame Ace Academy, which we have here in St. Petersburg. We're so pleased to have these two beautiful schools, St. Joseph and Sacred Heart, here at Notre Dame Ace Academies. I was visiting one of our schools in Chicago, in the Pilsen area, which is a Latino barrio in Chicago, Illinois. I was visiting St. Anne's, and so I ran into this little girl, 7th grade Mexican-American girl named Julia. And over pizza, I asked Julia what she liked about her school. And she responded that she liked the fact that it was a Catholic school. And so I said, well, why do you care that it's a Catholic school? And she said, well, because I get to learn more about what it means to be Catholic. So I asked her, well, why is being Catholic important to you? And she looked at me like I had 5 heads. And she said, because that's who I am. Isn't that beautiful? Because that's who I am. So, look, I mean, I think Julia's simple statement that an education in the faith is important because our faith defines who we are. This little girl's statement articulates the potential for Catholic schools to engage the new evangelization better than any theological utterance ever could. Julia's simple claim that her faith and her identity are the same captures for me why it is so important what we do in our schools. Because at the end of the day, the new evangelization is about what our schools, and our schools alone, offer an education in the faith, an encounter with the person of Jesus Christ. And so we invite Julia not just to pass tests, we do that, but we invite her to become a person fully, humanly alive, you know? Humanly alive, like Irenaeus said. So, these moments I just shared on our little ACE journey, these couple of moments with Father Warner, with Cardinal O'Connor, with Julia, I shared these moments because each of them coaxed us around another bend in that road that Gerard Manley Hopkins was on. I share these stories tonight just to underscore that we can't do this alone. Bishop Lynch can't do this. Our superintendent can't do this. Our principals can't do this. We have to rely on you, on one another. And we'll only get around that bend in the road if we embrace a bold faith in the Holy Spirit. So we need courage. We need friends. We need new eyes of faith to be prepared, whatever it takes to go where the Spirit is taking. We say in ACE, whatever it takes is what it takes. Whatever it takes is what it takes. Because the challenges facing our schools are new, so our solutions have to be new. A new evangelization demands fresh vision for Catholic schools. We can't allow the proud legacy of our schools, the way they used to be run, the way they used to be financed, the way they used to recruit students or principals or teachers, to simply become the only way we will conceive of these schools. We can't continue to look to the past for the answers of our future. We can't get caught up in nostalgia. So this year we celebrate 20 years, and I'll just end with a little advertisement. 20 years of ACE. And one thing we're going to do is we're launching a national bus tour. We just got gifted to us a Thorpe Palazzo. And we're covering it in blue and gold. So for those of you who don't like blue and gold, you're just going to have to put up with us. And we're coming to Tampa. And we're going to drive as fast as we can away from the storyline of the past few years, away from schools where every single primary goal is not to close. Let me just close by thanking you for inviting us to open these Notre Dame ACE Academies. Because in these schools, St. Joe's in West Tampa and Sacred Heart in East, in Pinellas Park, these schools are going to rewrite the history of Catholic schools. I really believe that. I really believe that. We're going to do whatever it takes. And I'm glad you're applauding, because to succeed we need your support, you know. And so I'm going to close because I suggested that for every minute I didn't speak, I was going to speak for 3 hours. For every minute I didn't speak, you owe me $1,000. So thanks so much. God bless you.